Mateki Densetsu Astralius is a bit of a wild one. An RPG based on music with that title, and there's a ton of unique gameplay systems, but you might want to hold off running out and getting it until you've seen this whole video. Mateki is the Japanese title of the opera known in English as The Magic Flute. It was the final opera composed by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, and is often pointed to as his single greatest work. The story is a simple fairy tale of a prince rescuing a princess, and then undertaking trials to ensure their marriage. Even if you're not familiar with the opera, you're almost definitely familiar with at least one of its pieces, because it gets used constantly in other media. By the way, what she's singing there is telling her daughter to murder her boyfriend. That context is usually lost. So what does Mateki Densetsu Astralius have to do with Mozart's The Magic Flute? Well, it has as much tie to Mozart as the Smurfs and the Magic Flute does, which is to say, absolutely nothing. Okay, I did find one or two characters in Astralius whose names were probably references to the opera. So what we have here is a musical RPG sharing a significant part of its title with one of the most famous operas in the world, an opera that is itself a kind of handy story for RPGs, and the video game has nothing to do with it. That sentence is everything about Astralius in a nutshell. The game doesn't start as an RPG. The first roughly half hour is an adventure game. You're controlling a flautist who's the leader of a band on a cruise ship, and the violinist of your quartet has gone missing. So your very first task is that you need to find her. You can walk up to people, hit button 1 to bring up the menu, and then choose to talk or search. Search doesn't work, or doesn't work the way that you'd expect. I'll come back to that when things get worse. So your violinist has locked herself in the ship's engine room, you know, a place that no one needs to get to while the ship is underway. But the stairway down to the engine room has been blocked by this kid who's sitting on a box of stuff. So you have to talk to the kid, right? Well, if you walk up to him and talk, nothing happens. You can't search there, and trying to physically interact with things so that you push the box doesn't help. You find his mother who's looking for him, but she doesn't do anything. Well, the solution here is that you have to stand above him and then talk in his direction. Yeah, the position for the kid is miscoded. If you talk to him in that spot after you've talked to his mother, then he'll run off and you move the box. That'll let you talk to the chief engineer who gives you the broken engine room key, which isn't actually the problem because the violinist locked the room while she was inside it. And now the ship's band has to go up to the captain with the broken key to let him know what's going on. So now's a good moment to point out that the sound design in Astralius is atrocious. When you bump into something or interact with something, it makes a sound effect that does not match the tone of the game at all. You'll also notice that the game's music is pretty bad. Those are real problems when this is an RPG all about music. This game just sounds bad. Getting back to the plot, the captain tells the band to jump down the smokestack, which, as we all know, would just lead to a big empty room, because ships only have smokestacks for style points. With that, we finally meet the violinist and complete our quartet, and the reason that she was down there was she was protecting another woman from the evil composer Ludbach. You know he's an evil composer because the other people on the ship will tell you that he sold his soul to the devil, that his music can control people's minds, and that he has plans to take over the world of Astralius. Note that you don't start in the world of Astralius. It's just for some reason people know that there's another magical world out there. You confront the composer, and he uses his magic music powers to knock you back, but fortunately, you're immediately told that he's vulnerable to roses. So you're handed a bunch, immediately go back to him, and he runs off rather than fighting you. As he flees, he drops some sheet music, and your band decides to pick it up and play it right there. That summons a giant tornado that picks up the cruise ship and whisks everyone to Astralius. And after all of that nonsense, you get a 60-second long unskippable title screen, and then are finally in the RPG. You can tell because when you press button 1 to open up the menu, you've got a whole bunch of options now, like checking your status, using special abilities, and managing your inventory. Well, before we get out there and start grinding up levels, we're not done with the insanity of this game yet. The first step is figuring out how to get down from this big pyramid. That spot in the middle looks like something, but when I walk on it, nothing happens. And searching that spot doesn't do anything. Well, as it turns out, you have to walk on it from the north side. If you're not facing the correct direction when you stand there, then nothing happens. Once you get down, you find out that you're in the temple of the goddess of Astralius, and because monsters have been emerging around the world, she tasks you with dealing with it. And that's it. That's your plot hook. Oh, you're told that there's a magic flute somewhere out there, and they want you to go find a magic gemstone. But really, it's, sure are a lot of monsters around now. Hey, new person who just showed up in this room, why don't you go kill them all? There are little flags on the ground, and those indicate places where there are things that you can pick up. And that's what the search option in the menu is for. We're not done here yet, because you need to go down into the basement and talk to this giant metal guy. He'll join forces with you, and that will instantly transform you into your fantasy outfit for no good reason. The big metal guy does not join your party, but you do have a second party member waiting at the entrance to the temple. It's the trumpet player, and she'll walk along behind you. Okay, now we're finally out in the world. Let's get into a fight, and you are not ready for how bad this is. Your options in combat are Metal Dude, use an ability, run away, use an item, defend, or look at the monsters. For some reason, when you're selecting your menu options, the monsters are covered up by a black square that does nothing. Now you might have noticed that you don't have an option to attack, and that's because the Metal Dude is the only thing that attacks monsters. Every person in the party tells the Metal Dude to attack something, and then he does it. When the monsters attack, they attack every person in the party individually. But this raises a big question. If the Metal Dude is doing all of the fighting, and you're taking all of the hits, then how does equipment work? And the answer is poorly. When you have equipment, you go to your inventory and choose to equip it. There are slots for weapon, armor, and shield. Using equipment just makes it vanish. It just gets sucked up into the Metal Dude. So if the Metal Dude doesn't get hit, why does he need an armor and shield? Well, because those defense points get applied to your characters, even though you only have one set of them, and you're explicitly adding it to somebody else who isn't there. So yeah, the whole combat and equipment system is a mess, and it doesn't make any sense. My flautist died in the first combat, so I returned to the temple to get him restored to life, and it turns out the goddess can't do that. No, you have to find the first village, and that's where you can save the game for the first time, as well as restore dead characters. The, maestro? I'm gonna call him a maestro since his house has a music symbol on it. Anyways, besides saving progress and resurrecting the dead, the maestro can also tell you how many experience points you need in order to level, and of course there is a huge variation between this for all characters, and you can pay the maestro to tune your instruments. If you choose to tune the instruments, he'll ask you how many times you want the instruments tuned. Because, you need to tune them multiple times in a row. The thing is, tuning instruments isn't actually tuning them. Instead, that's how you raise your maximum MP. You'll get new songs, which act as spells as you level up, but to get magic points in order to cast them, you have to go and pay to tune your instruments. You only gain 1 maximum MP every time you tune, and the initial healing spell costs 3 MP, so you'll need to run it at least that many times before you do anything. While you're grinding away and leveling up on the small floating continent that you start on, you'll notice that Astralius has a day-night cycle. At night, the monsters are exactly the same. What seems to change at night are the conversations that people will have with you. If you think you can stay at an inn to advance the time to morning, guess again. The healing places in town aren't inns, they're saunas. So no time passes at all while you use those. I got as far as the entrance to the first dungeon while I was playing, but I'd really need to grind for a while before I could make any progress. You will notice while walking around outside that this is one of those games where you can take one step and then get into another battle instantly. You are fighting an army of monsters. This is also one of those games where enemies can run away from you, and if they do so, you get nothing. Certain ones are more likely to run away than others, so you'll want to concentrate on putting them down first. Shockingly, it seems that Japanese players really don't like Astralius. They called it a major disappointment. Truly awful. And one person who claims that after playing it for a few hours became so sick of the game that they smashed the disc. To ask the obvious question here, is Astralius the worst PC Engine RPG? And I'm going to go no, but among the truly awful PC Engine RPGs that I have played, it has the worst presentation. It is a truly grating game to play. If we stripped away the terrible sound and nonsensical framing of every action, then Astralius would simply be another mediocre RPG. But they did make it musically themed while having terrible music. They did add that weird thing about having an armored knight Pokemon fight your battles for you. They did put a lot of effort into weird systems that don't positively affect the game. And so Astralius winds up being one of the more memorably bad RPGs on the PC Engine.